Hello, welcome to the Straight Talk about Small Business Success podcast. I am super excited. We've got an amazing guest. Her name is Nadine Keller. Nadine, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Salim. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Nadine's the founder of Precision Sales Coaching and Training, and she's the author of a book published by Wiley called Make It All About Them. And she's coached tens of thousands of salespeople in the Fortune 100 companies. And now she's taking her proven techniques to entrepreneurs, startups, and small businesses. Nadine, give us a little bit about your backstory, and then we're going to dive right in because I've got some really lots of questions I want to ask you.
Awesome. So I've been at it for a while. I started at Chase Manhattan Bank early in my career and was responsible for sales and marketing for the wholesale banking business. And then left Chase. Chase became my first client. Ironically, JP Morgan II. We know what happened to them. And that's the story of entrepreneurship, right? Is that we take our journey and we are often victims of whatever's going on in the marketplace. And so my goal is to help entrepreneurs to be more successful and to help them generate more revenue through proven sales techniques.
Yeah. Everyone wins when revenues goes higher.
Absolutely.
Employ more people, more profits, serve the community, give back in every sense of the word. Now, entrepreneurs that do not start their businesses to be salespeople or to be marketers, yet selling is often critical to the success of their business. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs who may not be thinking of themselves as natural salespeople?
Well, Salim, I think that sales gets a bad rap. And with good reason, right? We have all been in a situation, and of course, we think about the used car salesman, or we think about Wolf of Wall Street. And in my mind, the characteristics that make a really terrific salesperson is a natural desire to help people, and also being inquisitive, to really understand someone's situation. So while there are skills that certainly will help a salesperson to be more successful, it really begins with that genuine desire to help people. So I think in many entrepreneurs, in fact, I was working with an attorney a couple of weeks ago who said, you know what, I mean, I did not get in this to sell. And you don't really need to think about it in the traditional sense of selling. You need to think about it as helping people. It's not something that you do to someone. It's something that you do for someone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think of it, and what I connect with when it comes to sales is growth. I'm helping someone grow through my services, through my products. I'm growing my own company. I'm growing as a person as well. So I don't know, the growth for me, when I think you're coming from a place of serving, being inquisitive, learning about them, of what solutions they need. And in my mind, as an entrepreneur, I think of selling as growth. So
growth.
Pretty interesting.
It's funny, Salim, in developing this program that we're working on, our working title is a sales accelerator. And with some of the conversations that I've had recently, we're thinking of dropping the term sales because so many people bring, a kind of negative perspective to that word. So we're thinking of maybe even changing it to, a revenue accelerator.
Yeah. That's great. Now, what are some of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make when it comes to selling?
So I think making assumptions about what the needs of their clients are. And I think there's good reason for that. One is we're problem solvers and we want to get on it right away. And also we're a product of our last conversation often. We hear similar words from similar clients. And therefore, we make assumptions about what their needs are, what their situations are, what their opportunities are. And we jump too quickly without thoroughly understanding what their needs are and how we might be able to help them.
Mm, got it. Yeah. If you had to choose one skill that's important to sales success, what would it be?
Well, completely related to what I just said, it's questioning. And there are, so many books on sales, as you know, out there. In fact, there's a book, Spin Selling, which is an acronym for types of questions. I like to think,
that's a phenomenal book. Neil Rackham. I've read that, and I've shared the principles to so many entrepreneurs, and I use it myself as well. It's all about questions, right?
It's a great book, and they did tons of research that shows that the more questions a salesperson asks, the more successful they will be. And I like to think of questions in a really simple way, and that is what the questions yield. So in my mind, there are two types of questions. There are questions that get you the data, which is really the ticket to admission, right? You've got to know the facts and the figures of a situation. But then there's another set of questions that really get you insight into the situation, that goes beyond the data and the figures, but really helps you to understand the why behind a client's situation. And that's really where the magic happens. That's where we are able to position our solutions in a way that's really going to resonate with the person that we're talking to.
So would you say that it's asking questions that yield the why? Why is this person interested in this product or service?
Correct. And what we're going for there are the needs. And most business conversations were focused on the business needs, which of course is very important. But where decision-making tends to occur is not in the stated business needs, but in those business needs that aren't typically stated. And then there's a whole other set of needs, which are the personal needs, which is often, and some of those are stated up front and some of those are unstated. And if we can get into that area, which I call the red zone, the unstated business needs and the personal needs, then we are able to develop insight into the situation. And when we talk about what we can bring to the table to help our clients, it will be much more compelling to them.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, in a 1-hour sales conversation, how much time would you advise an entrepreneur, somebody who is in a selling position, how much time should they spend on questions? How much time do they spend on presenting what they've got to offer?
Such a great question. So earlier in the sales cycle, right? And whether it's just a 1-hour meeting or several meetings over time, earlier in the sales cycle, a minimum of 80% of the time, we want the client talking. And that can be tough because, sometimes you have the client who sits back and says, okay, what you got? And, tell me what you can do for me. And our natural tendency is to say, oh, well, we can do this, 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 and this. And before we know it, we're doing all of the talking. So we like to coach people to take control of that meeting, often by using an agenda up front and saying, so excited to meet you today. I'd love to spend the first, 30 minutes of this meeting understanding you, your situation, your needs. And once we do that, I can tell you a little bit about us and how we might be able to help. But, set it up from the beginning that the expectation is that they are doing, most of the talking. And if you do get that what you got kind of question, to bring them back by saying, I'm so excited to tell you about how we can help you here. But before I do, I have a few extra questions. Is that okay?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I personally, in my organizations, we've trained our team to do that. Is that, the excitement. We're gonna definitely get to, what you want to get to, Mr. Prospect. But if you don't mind, can I ask you a few questions, learn about you? And people love to share about them. And so
Absolutely.
that, and it may, in their head, it'll be like, yeah, let's do like a few minutes. And then as they start sharing, it can be the 20 minutes or 30 minutes and you can stop them because they're
Absolutely.
enjoying it. Now, asking questions, I mean, I feel that's a great way to build trust. And selling, I feel, is about trust. It's it's building trust with the person we're in front of. Um, can you talk about how to accelerate the development of trust?
Absolutely. So, before we can develop trust, we have to have credibility. So relationships tend to we think about it as a continuum that starts with credibility. Only when you have credibility are you able to build the trust. And only when you have the trust are you able to influence their thinking. So I look at it as that kind of continuum. And so if we take a look at trust in and of itself, I think that there are two components. There is competence and there is character. So the competence is really demonstrating that you know your stuff. And again, we don't want to do that too early in the sales cycle. There are opportunities to demonstrate your credibility and competence through the way you introduce yourself, through the way that you're facilitating the meeting, for example, and certainly by the stories that you tell, any proof points that you have. The character part of the trust component really has to do with a couple of things. It's your intention to help, right? This person, to be of service to this person, your desire to genuinely understand their situation, your follow through, your keeping of your promises, all of those things that we know builds trust. And in the sales conversation, especially when we're meeting somebody quickly, we don't have a long history with them. There are techniques, and I hate to use the word techniques because it really comes from genuinely who you are, and they will read that. But it's making it, in the title of my book, make it all about them, will go a long way to helping with trust.
Wondering, is there a difference between selling to women and selling to men?
There actually is. Men, obviously our brains are different, right, from the beginning. I also think that we have to acknowledge that the sales process that's in America today was developed by men, right? And it was back in the 40s that people really started to talk about things like features and benefits and that kind of thing. And it didn't take into consideration that women actually are different. And just to give you an example of some of the differences there, women like to make decision by consensus. And they also like to talk things out and be part of the solution, where men tend to come much faster to a decision. And consensus is not as important to them. They tend to focus more on the facts, although decision-making is emotional for all of us, whether you're a man or a woman. Our decisions first come from emotion. But there are differences. And I think that salespeople who don't recognize that, it's a disservice really, to them. And of course, it's all generalization. And number one rule is to really know and assess who you're talking to.
Wow, interesting how it varies.
Yes.
In today's world, I mean, it's getting harder and harder to get people's attention. What strategies can be used to get prospects to engage?
Yeah, I mean, it really is tough these days, right? And we're all bombarded with information, particularly in our inbox. We send emails, and especially if we're selling, they tend to get ignored. So a couple of really quick tips. One would be the subject line in an email often gets ignored, and it can be really powerful. So instead of saying something like checking in, which is a common email tag, we might want to use a question in there. It may be something like, can you guess what the latest research suggests that, clients ignore on their tax returns? Or, obviously I'm making that up, but something that actually pulls them in, almost acts as a tease, like they use in news. Coming up is the weather report, right? The big changes. So that's one thing, using email. But I also think that we need to get creative in other ways. And one way to get creative is to use the good old snail mail, which nobody uses anymore. And in fact, when I started my business, which is now 17 years ago, so, now it's even harder to get attention. But one of the things that I did, and I think was a huge platform for the business, is I sent out postcards. And in the postcard, wrote a handwritten note saying, with a headline of what we're doing and requesting a call, a time, 5 minutes to determine if it makes sense for us to talk again. And I'll be calling next Thursday. And I had so many people say, oh my God, you're the one who sent the handwritten note and take the call. And then also I was talking to a client recently who said that he had received, and I thought this is very creative, a to-do list on a refrigerator, a picture of it by text, and circled was, get in touch with Alistair, finally get in touch with Alistair. And he sent it to him and he said, this continues to be on my to-do list. Can we get a call? And Alistair had said, how could I say no to that? So creativity is important.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I love the postcards idea. And, you can have different size postcards. You can have like jumbo postcards as well. Yeah. And I've used that at different points in marketing in my businesses, is jumbo large postcards that are like, they stand out in the mail. And then the other thing that we have done successfully is you do lumpy mail, is to put an object and connect the object to the marketing message. But when somebody gets an envelope and it's got like something funny in it, it's like, it doesn't sit right. It doesn't sit flat, right? There's a curiosity element, right?
I love that.
When I open it, it's like, what is inside? And if we can connect it and not make it gimmicky, or just add a tchotchke, but if we can connect that thing that makes it lumpy to the message that we are sharing in, the marketing message, then it really kind of ties in well.
I love the lumpy. I must borrow that from you. I think that's a terrific idea.
It's free for use. You may. This is so good, Nadine. We've covered so much ground. We've got just a few minutes left. I've got a few more questions. I want to talk about price negotiation, or even structuring fees, prices. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, that's a big conversation. I think if there's like one takeaway, since we don't have that much time right now, it is that whenever you negotiate price, there must be a concession. And the reason why that is important is we don't want our clients to think that we're overpricing to begin with. So set your price. For example, I had a situation not that long ago where a client had asked, I don't know what it was, a $40,000 proposal. And they said, can you do it for 30? And my response was, we absolutely can do it for 30. Let me go back and take a look at some options here. And, in my case, it was we'll do part of it remotely instead of on site. Or another option, we would have fewer participants in the session. But it's important that there be a concession there. Otherwise, it can feel like your pricing was too high to begin with.
And I think that has to be balanced with, giving the client the results, right? And sometimes, if we tone it down or water it down, like, if we've created a proposal, it's got best practices in it to get the client the outcome.
Yes.
So there is that aspect of it, I think that, I would say people would need to watch out for, right?
Absolutely.
To bring the price down. We don't want to water it down too much, because then we won't give the client the results.
Before we do that, right, really understand the value, right, that you are bringing to the client, the return on their investment, and make sure that in our proposal, in our discussions, that value is crystal clear to them.
Yeah. Giving them the outcome that they want from all the questions we ask, and the stated needs that we go beyond the stated needs, where we really find out the why, as you've shared.
And that's the red zone. That's right. Yeah.
Right. This is so good. I've got two questions. My final question, which we'll get to, is how can people reach out to you? But before we go there, is there anything, Nadine, that I should have asked you, something you really want to share that you feel will be valuable to our listeners, and I didn't ask you yet?
I would think that it's really, I'll kind of reemphasize something that I already said, which is it's about intention, and to think about sales not as something that you do to someone, but something that you do for someone, that you're really in service of clients. And that will, coming to the table with that perspective can trump any kind of a skill or technique that, you may have heard works over the years. So I think often we're not spending as much time thinking that this is about connecting with individuals and less about kind of pushing what we have to be sold.
Good advice. What's the best way for listeners to reach out to you?
So we have a website, precisionsalescoaching.com. And I'd love to give a telephone number and an offer if I can, Salim. I mentioned we're in the process of creating a program that is targeted to entrepreneurs. And part of that process is talking to as many people in professional services who are in B2B sales situations, so that we can really deeply understand the needs out there before we develop a program. And so in return for someone's time, if they can give us a half an hour, and we're going to just ask them about 10 questions, in return for that, we will give them sales coaching. So they can think about any kind of a sales situation that they're in that they'd like our perspective on, or even show us their website and their marketplace story, and we'd be happy to give feedback on that. And the best way to do that would be to either text or call us at 860-431-0345. And also, again, you can reach out to us via the website, which is precisionsalescoaching.com.
That's awesome. Thank you for the generous offer there. You're doing market research and you're giving something really valuable to the person for that. Nadine, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing so many gems, really helpful, useful information, content. So thank you.
Well, it was my pleasure, Salim. Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.